Hello everyone, welcome to my fight recap and analysis for Motorama 2019 with my featherweight combat robot Crippling Depression. In this video I'm going to go over all 5 fights that Crippling Depression had during Motorama and kind of give you a little bit of insight into what happened during the fights and kind of what my strategy was going into them, as is the tradition with all my fight recap videos. For this competition, it was the first time that Crippling Depression did not place. I've always gotten first or second place, and so I was a little bummed out that I didn't place, but I was definitely trying a few new things out, and you know, there was a lot of new robots out there, and things just didn't go my way. That is the tradition of combat robots. So anyway, let's get started with the very first fight. My first fight of the day was against Knockoff White. Knockoff White is a shuffler bot with an overhead hammer. Now, shuffler bots get a 50% weight bonus because they don't use traditional wheels for locomotion. They use a shuffling mechanism, and so it was a 45-pound bot. So when you look in the video, you can see it is much larger and much heavier than myself. I didn't really have any good strategy going into this fight whatsoever. It's an overhead hammer, and so it was pretty obvious to use my overhead spinning bar. The overhead spinning bar basically covers the entirety of the top side, I guess, of my robot. So anywhere that hammer comes into contact with me, it's going to hit the overhead bar first. So really the strategy was just keep the weapon spinning, let that hammer come down and hit me, and that was pretty much it. I wasn't trying to go for the wheels. I wasn't really trying to go for anything. I was just trying to make sure that I was close enough to where when the hammer came down, it hit the overhead bar. So let's see how that went.
Crippling Depression, are you ready? Crippling Depression is ready. We're ready in 3, 2, 1, fight robots. This is going to be an entertaining fight. Chunks of plastic already popping off of the front of Knockoff White. The spinner on top of Crippling Depression is one of the most powerful here. Sparks, spark! There is smoke everywhere. I think that is the end. Do we have movement? Instant smoke. We're going to do a countdown. 10, 9. Oh no, that is the end. By judges' authority, Knockoff White has been eliminated. Your winner, Crippling Depression.
So as you could see, the overhead bar configuration really paid off. All he needed to do was bring that hammer, bring that axe down, came into contact with the spinning bar, and it just tweaked the head of the hammer. I don't know, what do you think, Adam? Should I call this an axe or a hammer? But anyway, it just came into contact with that, really tweaked that whole arm. I was talking to Adam, the builder of Knockoff White, in the pits later, and he was saying that one of his drive ESCs blew up and it took out his radio, and so that's where some of the smoke was coming from. He didn't really know what happened because it didn't really come into contact with any of that, so I'm not really sure exactly what happened, but the whole drive side puffed out and then the radio went into smoke too, so that whole thing was just kind of dead and it was over pretty quickly. Really cool robot. The shuffling mechanism is one of the best I've ever seen. That was really, really neat, but unfortunately a very quick fight for him. So all that was left to do is recharge the batteries and move on to my second fight of the day, which was once again against Huge. Huge is a very interesting design and a very difficult design to plan for. This is the second time I fought Huge. I fought it last year at Motorama and I did quite well. I used the disc on the top and just kind of rammed right for the middle, hit their bar and split the thing mostly in half, just kind of collapsed it in. And so wasn't really like feeling confident going into this match, but it was at least a known value. So the plan here was to stick with the overhead bar and basically try and kind of repeat that same thing from last year. But after seeing them on BattleBots and fighting against, I think, Ice Wave and I forgot who else, I noticed that with a big, long spinning bar, horizontal spinning bar, that it might be vulnerable to attacks at the wheels, so I decided to also try and go after the wheels as much as possible. So that was basically the strategy going in and fighting Huge. So let's see how that went.
In the red square, his driving is manic and his transistors are bipolar. We have a Crippling Depression. This should be a good matchup, everyone. Judges, 3 minutes on. Excuse me. Blue square, are you ready? Blue square is ready. Red square is ready. Judges now, 3 minutes on the clock. 2, 1, fight, robots. These robots are fighting. Both spinners immediately up to speed. Oh, big hit there from Crippling Depression on huge. Crippling Depression is oh, goodness! Taking chunks out of the wheels. Crippling Depression hitting the walls. This is going to be non-stop action, everyone. Oh, and Crippling Depression has tied itself up in Huge's wheel. This is going to be entanglement unless they can separate themselves. We are going to pause the match. These two robots are going to be separated by our trained professional robot separators. This is a dicey situation. Our robot separation artists must make sure that the weapons on either robot are unable to spin so that they can safely pull the two apart. The thing about it is Steve Irwin putting a rubber band around that alligator's nose so it can't chomp down as he moves them from pool to pool. The white... After a little bit of depression extraction there. All right, judges, are we ready to restart? 3, 2, 1, fight, robots. Huge limping along, but still able to spin up. Don't let things fool you. This is still anyone's fight. Huge may be limping, but those plastic wheels can take a beating and keep on rolling. Oh! Oh, goodness, big hit after big hit. Crippling Depression not showing any signs of slowing down. Huge now starting to have a few problems. Crippling Depression trying not to kill itself. Oh, Crippling Depression is inverted. It's going to be, it can't self-right, but it can still drive. Huge is going to want to try and get that weapon to just make any kind of contact with Crippling Depression, and it would really wow the judges. Meanwhile, Crippling Depression may want to try and break Huge's weapon with its face. Something like that. Oh, sparks flying off that wedge. Just about a minute 15 left in this match. Crippling Depression able to drive slightly better than Huge, but seems to be having some drive issues of its own. It is not meant to drive in that inverted state. To be honest with you, I'm not even sure how Huge is still spinning. It's so close to the ground. Just under 30 seconds left. Trying to see some kind of robot-on-robot contact. Oh, big hit there. Each one of these hits doing serious job denting Crippling Depression, but that is one solid bot. It is not going to be taken out easily. With just the right hit, it's possible that Crippling Depression could be self-righted. But oh, goodness. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that is your match going to the judges. What a fight, folks.
I ended up winning the match versus Huge. It went to a judge's decision, and they actually went and looked at Huge in the pits and then looked at Crippling Depression in the pits, and they found that I didn't really have any damage. I had just gotten flipped upside down. My weapon still worked, my drive still worked. Huge did have obviously a lot of damage to the wheels, so the judge's decision ended up going to me. And it was pretty cool there that you saw I got tangled up in Huge's wheels. One interesting thing that I didn't mention at the beginning of this video that I probably should have, there was concern this year at Motorama with everyone getting more powerful, and between my weapon and also Rum Ham's weapon, later more on that coming, they were kind of a little bit concerned with the amount of kinetic energy that the robots were dishing out, and so they instituted a weapon tip speed limit. Now, unfortunately for me, the tip speed with the overhead bar is way over their limit of 200 miles an hour. I think mine was like 300, something like that, and so I had to throttle my weapon down to 50%, and this posed a bit of an issue because if I was running that weapon at full speed, I might have just sliced right through those wheels instead of getting tangled up. You know, it's neither here nor there, but that is just an interesting point to make here. The other thing that I'd want to say is the after the entanglement, I was kind of surprised to see that Huge was actually moving before the clock was restarted again. Kind of not really 100% sure of the rules there, but I was kind of always under the impression that when a entanglement happens, you're just supposed to simply move the robots aside. You're not necessarily supposed to get back up on a prime fighting position, because it was kind of down on one side and the weapon was going to be hitting the ground, and he repositioned to make sure that the weapon was still spinning. So actually, I really wasn't all that thrilled to see that, but that is the way it goes. But anyway, that was the Huge fight, and so I got a win out of that and moved on to the next fight. My third fight of the day was against Kit D Cat, K-I-T/D Cat, and for the rest of this video, I'm just going to call it Kitty Cat because it's just a lot easier to say. Kitty Cat is a horizontal spinner, mid-cutter kind of thing, very similar to like Tombstone or Beam, and it was a really nasty bot, and earlier in the day it actually took out Megatron. So Megatron, last year's winner, and I think winner for 2 years previous, was taken out by them. So I was really not looking forward to fighting them. The plan was to use the wedge and use the disc on the top. these bar spinners can be really unpredictable, and after seeing what happened when I got knocked upside down with Huge, I decided to not risk it, just go for the wedge and go for the disc on top, much like I did last year with Beam, and just kind of hope that wedge worked out and hope I could, have a very similar fight. So let's see how that went.
All right, blue square, are you ready? Red square, are you ready? Crippling Depression getting some massive chunks taken out of it. That beautiful pink paint job. Oh, sweet sassy molassy. Ripped a wedge right off of Crippling Depression. Before this event, all the robots had to tone down their weapons in the high-powered weight class of the 30-pound if they spun at high speed. Kit D Cat cut their weapon speed by 50%, and it looks like that's not handicapping them at all. Kitty Cat flipped over. With that, they're having trouble getting purchase on Crippling Depression. They might have lost a tooth on that hit and are going out of balance. Crippling Depression, strategically waiting for his moment. And there's a new sound that I don't recognize. I don't know what that is, but it's not good for someone. Kitty Cat down to one drive and one wobbly blade with 1 minute left on the clock. And it sounds like the belt on Kitty Cat is slipping. Crippling Depression looks like they might have lost the drive side as well. Come on, little buddy, you can do it. Seconds left on the clock. And we've got smoke coming out of Crippling Depression. Is that the good smoke or the bad smoke? Ten seconds left on the clock. Crippling Depression. Can you show movement? Crippling Depression stuck on the floor with one side of drive working. Let's give a big round of applause.
This fight ended up going to a judge's decision, and Kitty Cat ended up winning, and I think rightfully so. I think that was definitely the right decision. Somewhere in the first part of the fight, the wedge was taken off, and when I go into the whole damage report, I'll kind of show you what happened with that. But essentially, the mounting for these little nubs that hold it to the frame, those pulled out and just ripped right out, and so the wedge was lost, which was pretty unfortunate. And then so I started just going towards the front. Now, one thing that you might notice, it really wasn't driving all that well, and you can't see it on camera, and I'm going to show this later on, but my wheels basically fell apart. I had only had 2 fights of the day. The very first one was really quick. The huge fight was a little bit longer, but my wheels just decided to disintegrate. And you can see here, I am just pulling pieces of the rubber off, and for this reason, I'm going to be moving to making my own wheels. I am not thrilled with BaneBots. Their quality has just gone downhill. These things just basically ripped apart after driving in like 2 fights. So anyway, I was having issues driving, and that became a real big problem. And then I lost the wedge, and then somewhere, I don't know, maybe 3/4 into the fight, one of my drives went down, one of my sides of drive went down. And this has never happened to me before. Crippling Depression has never done the crab walk thing, and so really I wasn't really sure how to deal with that, and that ultimately decided my fate. Once I lost drive, I really didn't have control anymore, and I couldn't position myself the way I wanted, and right towards the very end of the fight, one of my pulleys inside split, and I ended up losing the weapon like within the last, I don't know, 15 seconds or so. So I ended up having some issues. I'm not sure if those issues were due to just age. I've been using the same pulleys since day one, and actually my drive ESCs, I've never blown a drive ESC, and those were the original ones. So I've had those for, 2 years now. So maybe it was just age of components. They just finally wore out, but Crippling Depression really wasn't in good shape after this fight. So move on to the next one. So after the last fight, I was sitting at 2 wins and 1 loss, and that puts me into the losers bracket. My next fight was up against Ratcatcher, which is a really nasty undercutter. It's a different undercutter than mine. It's got like the 2 wheels and the big undercutter up front, more the traditional undercutter. And it's really nasty, really loud, and a really big weapon. And I spent most of my time repairing Crippling Depression. The weapon was out, and one of my drive sides was out. The drive was pretty easy. All I did was pull out the ESC, put a new ESC in, and all that was perfectly good. The weapon took some time to fix. One of the pulleys was shot. Thankfully, I had a spare. The motors were a little bit loose, so that whole thing just kind of needed to be taken apart and rebuilt. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to plan out strategy or anything like that. It was basically just get it working. And because the armor on the underneath side was kind of buckling in a little bit, I really didn't have the option to run the disc again. I had to run the overhead bar because the disc runs so close to the underside of the robot. I'd have to do some modifications. When the front gets hit in, it kind of smashes the underside in, and then it gives me less clearance. So really the only option I had for the time that I had was to run the overhead bar. So my thought was use the wedge, use the overhead bar, hopefully get them to ride up, hit weapon to weapon, and see what happens. So let's see how the fight went against Ratcatcher.
All right, red square, Crippling Depression, are you ready? Red square is ready. Blue square, Ratcatcher, are you ready? Rats, they are ready. Judges, 3 minutes. 2, 1, fight, robots. Both robots up to speed very quickly. This is going to be a heck of a first hit. Huge sparks flying.
What a hit!
And Ratcatcher has just exploded.
That's a tap out.
We have a tap out and we have a battery
and
fire.
we got smoke.
We have a much prompter reaction to this fire than the last one, but still have a bit of a smoke screen. Folks, we're going to take a little bit of a break to let this ventilate out. This might be a good time to get a drink.
I was really nervous going into this fight against Ratcatcher. I mean, you heard it in the beginning. It's a really nasty weapon, and it's really thick too, so it kind of hits anywhere on me. And so I got really lucky that he just rode up the wedge just enough, hit weapon to weapon, and he was having some issues with, I think it was one of his cover panels. He can maybe correct me in the comments if he wants, but it was like one of the cover panels was manufactured wrong, and what happened is with any of those big hits up front to the weapon, that cover panel would kind of come off, and then it came into contact with the weapon, flew off. If you go frame by frame on this, I think you can use the period or the comma key on YouTube. You can go frame by frame and you can see that panel just kind of disintegrates, it just goes off, and then all the batteries and the electronics are exposed, and as that weapon's still coming around, came into contact with the batteries, and they literally went in all 4 corners of the arena. And I mean, it was a couple hours to get all that aired out. It just completely filled the arena. So thankfully that was a relatively quick fight for me. Crippling Depression was not in prime form at this point in the competition, so that was a very very necessary win for me at that point and gave me a little bit of wind in my sails for the next fight. So let's check out the 5th and final fight of the competition. My last fight of the day was against Rum Ham XXX. Rum Ham XXX is a larger version of the Beetleweight version Rum Ham, which, fun fact, Crippling Depression was designed... okay. My last and final fight of the day was against Rum Ham XXX. Rum Ham XXX is a larger version of Rum Ham, which is a 3-pound Beetleweight, which was the inspiration for the original Crippling Depression. So kind of an interesting full circle thing. Luke is the builder of Rum Ham, and he is also a Colorado guy, so we know each other. He has actually been in this shop and filmed a couple little videos with me, so it was an interesting matchup. I was both looking forward to it and also not looking forward to it. I was looking forward to it because I wanted to fight Rum Ham and I wanted to fight Luke, but I wasn't looking forward to it because Rum Ham is very unpredictable. It's a huge spinning mass of a weapon with a really large motor on it, and it just kind of flings around the arena. And because of that, it's just not really all that predictable. And at this point in the competition, my wheels were just basically shot. I couldn't really predictively drive around. The arena Motorama is just shot. I mean, it's not amazing to begin with, but now it's really terrible. So I was just kind of going to cross my fingers, try and use the wedge, and ultimately what I was trying to do was break the weapon. Their weapon is direct drive, so it has the motor directly attached to the weapon. Mine's obviously a bit different than that, so I was trying to see if we could do enough weapon-to-weapon hits to where their weapon would stop and maybe I would end up with a judge's decision. At this point in the competition, though, the only option I had for a weapon was my overhead bar, so unfortunately getting flipped upside down was a bit of an issue. So let's see how that fight went.
All right, the blue square. It is the hammed one who likes to run. It's Run Ham. Are you ready? He's ready to go. In the red square, it is YouTube sensation Robert with his pink robot known as Crippling Depression. Crippling Depression, are you ready? Set to go. Let's put 3 minutes on the clock, please. And some spinning and some out-of-control spinning to begin this fight. There's a shiny hit. And now we have the pink one upside down, and Run Ham can't decide which direction it wants to go. And now the ham one is up to speed. Ow, that's a shiny spark. Crippling Depression still in it though. I just don't think he can spin. He's got the hope to get flipped over on a hit. That thick armor though, looking to take some abuse. Oh, Crippling Depression spinning but can't do anything here. We're at the count Crippling Depression out here. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Knockout. Your winner is Run Ham.
Of all the fights I've had with Crippling Depression, this was probably the most disappointing fight I've ever had. I really wanted a lot more out of this fight, and unfortunately that first big hit, I flew up against the wall, got flung upside down, and then because of just the massive pits in the floor and because of most of my tread being gone on my wheels, I got stuck in one of those divots, couldn't move, and got counted out. So it was a pretty short fight for me. I really wanted to have more of a fight. I wanted him to just tear me apart, and even if my weapon stopped, I just wanted to keep going into that weapon until one of us broke. So, you know, it's always kind of unfortunate when you just stop driving and get hung up on the floor. So I really wasn't happy with how that came out, but unfortunately that's just how it went. So that was the end of my fights for Motorama 2019. So there you have it. These were my fights for Motorama 2019 with Crippling Depression. Overall, it was still a good event, but I really was a little bit disappointed with the performance of Crippling Depression. I've always kind of prided myself on the fact that Crippling Depression has been really reliable, and it really hasn't had a solid knockout up until this time. It's always kind of kept going. I had a radio issue a couple times, but other than that, it's just been a bot that you really have to destroy if you want to take it out. So I was a little bit disappointed with this showing. However, I did learn a lot. I learned that the overhead bar does come with its own challenges. It is good for good knockouts, but at the same time, it has the disadvantage of obviously getting flipped upside down. Now, the first time I got flipped upside down with Huge, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I was still able to kind of drive around and control the fight, kind of. But with Rum Ham towards the end of the day, with the floor just being awful like it was, I mean, there was, half-inch, inch divots into that floor. With a low clearance bot like mine, it just proved to be really problematic. So I could probably maybe only do that in the future if there was a steel floor, not the wooden floor like Motorama has. But I did learn some things, and overall, it still works, it still performs, everything still drives the way it does. I didn't have any electronic issues, so I learned some things about the design, so going into the next competition, I have a few things to tweak and fix. So, as always, thanks for watching, and you can check me out on my Facebook page for more updates. I am currently in the process of building a bot for BattleBots. I am on Team Caustic Creations, and right over there off camera is Copperhead, so be sure to check out my channel for updates on that, and check me out on TV when BattleBots Season 4 airs. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
All right, crowd, are you ready? This is going to be fun. Hey, can we put 5 minutes on the clock, please? Let's sit back and enjoy, folks. And the polite patriot just got sent back to Canada in a handbasket. Oh, the pumpkin carving contest has come early. Sadbot is just slow. I'm sorry, the pumpkin just gets me every time. That didn't take long for the pumpkin to separate again. Sadbot is just slowly just limping its way across. Big hits. Oh my goodness. I'll tell you what, I don't think we're going to make it to 5 minutes here. If they are, they're going to be limping through. And Sadbot will not win. A nice hollow ring from Sadbot. Oh, there goes a piece of something. Armor is flying everywhere. Bad Blood taking a piece. Oh my goodness. There is some tumbling going on. Bad Blood is just tearing apart. Both the New Zealand bots are just having their way with everything. Oh my goodness. It's still moving though. Still moving. You haven't killed it yet. Oh. Ow. Well, Earl's upside down. Oh, yeah, the piece of armor that made it above the bumpers. Does somebody want to be nice and get Crippling Depression? He's got himself off and free. Oh, Sadbot is going to take on it. Right into the wipe up. Where's the lipo at? Right under the okay. Once again, folks, please try and avoid the little lithium polymer battery towards the door. Sadbot, go protect that area, please. Don't run over it. That's all I'm asking. Don't crush it. Yes. Thank you for being a safe Sadbot. Sadbot may help the one disc spinner off here, though. You have to understand, Sir Kill-A-Lot had a mean temper, and I think this one has a mean temper too. Believe it or not, we still have 3 active robots in this Rumble, and we are to a minute 30 plus, a minute 30 left to go, at least in this fight. Come Come on, Sadbot. Get Crippling Depression up. Yay! Good Sadbot. Good Sadbot. Will we see anybody else get launched to the ceiling? Oh! Crippling Depression is getting a crippling 2-on-1 beating, courtesy of the disc spinner combo. Another big hit, and we're down to 2, and we may make it to just 1. I think that may be it. Oh! Sadbot almost won by default. We'll just let it go unless... Sadbot can get angry. You don't make Sadbot angry. Because Sadbot becomes angry Sadbot. Yo, come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. I'm telling you, you don't want none of this. Oh, that was a piece of something that got sandwiched between the bumper. Oh, it's a piece of armor. Okay, that's what that was. But I think we are done. We got 13 seconds. We'll count it out, guys. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's your Featherweight Rumble. All right, get the battery out first, Ed. Thank you. Okay, now you can all deactivate. Let's start with